Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement and lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Maria, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. I've been spending all morning watching videos from you on Instagram and LinkedIn. I knew I liked you when I saw one of your posts maybe last month, but I didn't realize how deep you were in the social media rabbit hole. So I'm excited to dive deep with you today.
I'm really looking forward to it. And this is a recent thing for me, social media also the past 4 or 5 years.
You can't
It's
really
been
say 4 or 5 years is recent anymore, right?
it's
Like,
recent. It's recent for me.
yeah, for sure. You are, what was cool is I didn't even know when I asked you to be on a guest was you're a Lawline customer and you've been a Lawline customer for a number of years.
Of
So,
course.
so that was like a fun bonus. And I saw you essentially for about the past 20 years, you've been a practicing real estate attorney in New York, Florida, and Georgia. And you're correct? Uh,
I'm a New York City attorney. But I am in-house counsel. I was a fractional in-house counsel, so I would be like the outside counsel in Florida and in Georgia for my clients who are New York City clients. But yes, I have been in Georgia and Florida a lot, and I do work in Greece too, but as an outside counsel.
It's interesting. I couldn't find a website for you. Like I see you all over social media. I found you on LinkedIn, but maybe as a fractional website. And I searched. So am I
So
wrong?
it's MY, so it's MYNY Law, but it's in the middle of being redone because I've taken a little bit of a new direction. It is my initials as an attorney. We have to have our name in there. So it's Maria Yiannitsarakos, MYNY, New York Attorney, law.com. So it should be cleaned up and redone within the week. So you will
And
find me.
the new direction is the coaching, the confidence, the negotiations, the areas that give you energy in life, talking about stoicism, talking about strength finders, talking about the things that drive and energize you, and realizing there's a big need for so many professionals at any age who need more confidence and focus and happiness in their life.
Ab
So,
Absolutely, and that will be part of it, more speaking, everything. I think I'm taking a little bit of a new direction, but it's always been who I am.
fantastic.
I'm putting it out into the world. How about that?
You you have to see it to believe it, to achieve it, or something to that degree from Think and Grow Rich or The
Oh,
Secret or any of those books.
any
So,
of them.
so that's what I'm excited about when I'm doing my research on you and why I do the podcast. You don't really know when you choose a guest, you go based on instinct and gut, based on
Mhm,
if you don't know them. And then it gives you an opportunity to dive and learn into somebody. And when I started seeing your posts, and I actually saw some recent podcasts, you've done one on negotiations and another one, it was on LinkedIn Live. I'm like, I really like her. Now I know why I'm doing this because we're very similar. And I think a lot of people will get that energy. And so here's where I'm going to start with the
mhm.
question. Because I
Sure.
see how much you do in talking, and you have your shtick, you know what you're going to say. Is there anything that you don't get to talk about as much? Because I've seen you talk a lot about negotiations and confidence and strength finders on your learning journey, because this is Lawyers Who Learn. This is how you've learned
Mhm,
and grown over the course of
mhm.
your career since when you graduated in 99, but your whole life that you wish people asked you about or you got to talk about more. And if not, we don't have to go in that direction, but I just wanted to see where that would take us.
I think part of it is your journey of life. So while negotiation, I think and why I do discuss it, negotiation, confidence are those important things that are going to get you what you want out of life. I really truly believe that. My stoicism is how I see the world. And while it's about external events and how we can't control those, we have a lot more control and choice than we think. And I think that is the most important thing. I think a lot of times we so in my life, I made some choices that maybe other attorneys would made. Staying home with my kids for in the beginning of my career, a lot of people, a lot of women at the time, the most important thing was for them was to lean into their career, to get the big promotions, to do all those things. And I knew because of my own experience, my own life, how important it was that when my husband and I did decide to have a family and I had my first child, at the time we didn't have, it was a little bit different 25 years ago. I graduated in 1999. There wasn't as much part time, there wasn't as much work from home or any of these opportunities that we have today. So I had to figure out I can't control the external events, but what can I control for myself? So I make certain decisions for myself. And I think that's important. These decisions that are going to impact your family, your life, your business, your law, everything. So I made a decision to start to be my own boss. That's not something that I was even thinking about. I was like, I'm going to work for a big law firm or this. And I did work
Yeah,
for a law
I
firm for
saw
a
you
short
work
time.
for 4 years. You worked for a law firm.
Part-time for some of it because I
So
was I
you
was
were,
having kids during
yeah.
that time.
Well, and that's I've interviewed several people, and who one was Fanny Fetterman, who actually went to law school with, and she knew right away in law school she wanted to have a work-life balance, and she's done it to this day. And so it's interesting because 4 years after doing that, what was the mindset? And we're going to go back to what you said about the journey of your life, because I think that's a
Mhm.
great conversation. Was there something where you was like, okay, I don't want to work for somebody else anymore, and that you decided to open up your own shop? What was
I
the
needed
growth
the
of that
freedom.
then?
I wanted freedom to be able to choose. So Stoicism is about what can I control, right? I could control my reaction. I can control the skills. I can control. There's so many things I can control. So it's while I can't control these external events, I can control what I can control. And that was part of it. I wanted to be able to have the freedom to be home when I needed to for my children, work and still be able to work, which is important to me. I love being a lawyer. That's why I chose it. I chose law for a reason. And at the time, I thought I couldn't have it all. And while I didn't have maybe the perfect, I'm going to say perfect, the career of getting to partner at a big law firm, it was the right move for me. And it was happiness for me that I was able to do the things that I loved and be an attorney, be a mom and be home with my kids and be an attorney. And the freedom to be able to do that was working for myself and choosing my own clients and choosing what I was interested in.
You talked about your life journey, like as the first question. And I do think it's interesting because when you go in your LinkedIn profile, you essentially, I don't know how you change it, you share your life journey on it and people get to know you. Tell me a little bit about that. And tell us briefly, like, what is that life journey? Because you also, I'll say one other thing, you also get deep and personal in another post where you share about growing up without a father and how
Mhm.
you actually decided to reach out to him 30 years later, and you had a relationship afterwards, even though it was a big thing. So those are things that I can relate to because I post every day on LinkedIn, usually more personal than professional and like an insight. So yeah, I just want to better understand like the description and how your journey has become this public journey too.
I think it's important for me. I'm okay with sharing because I think it could help someone. That's
Yeah,
the whole point. Because
for sure.
if they see me going through it, then they're like, "Oh, I can do it too." And that's how you empower the people, empower your family, your kids, is through how you do it and making it okay to maybe take another route. That was my initial. I was to share in an effort not only to empower others to do the same, but also I really love my LinkedIn community. And I felt very comfortable to be able to do that and to share the lessons because each thing, each story, each obstacle is part of my stoicism. Each obstacle you have overcome is a learning lesson. And isn't that what we're learning? It's lawyers who learn. Lawyers, we learn through the obstacles that we overcome. And that's the strength and the confidence that we take into everything that we have in our lives. I think one of the things that even my confidence, I concentrate on confidence is because that has come through doing what I say, overcoming obstacles. All those things are from my life experience. So when I do share my life story, I'm sharing all the lessons that go with it. I'm sharing how I got to the where I am and why I speak about the things I do and why it's empowering and it's for us to continue to learn and to continue to overcome. That growth mindset, I think, is so important in the law profession, in any profession. That's what keeps us young and learning.
I can tell you've definitely read a lot of books and areas. Which, and if you need to look at your phone and see
No,
Kindle or whatever,
I
what are
don't
some
need to.
books that stick out to you and and that you would recommend to others to read? But what are some, name the top ones that, you always refer to?
Okay. So, of course, my Stoic, Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, it's a must. It's a book that I go to regularly. I just read passages to start my week yesterday with my coffee. Just it's mindset, everything just bring me
So
back.
let's talk about, if I stop you there, will you forget the other books? No, you have those
Oh
saved.
no, I
Yeah.
already know what
So,
I know.
so I appreciate, and I've been time not even knowing it was Stoicism, because there's only two things you can control in life: how you think and how you feel. That comes
Right.
from Marcus Aurelius, that comes from Epicurus and all that stuff. So I was like, and Ryan Holiday
Oh,
he's
I
been,
love Ryan. He's one of my favorite
yeah,
authors.
so he's who's brought Stoicism to the modern
Mhm.
era, right? And so I was like, great, I'm going to go straight to the source and I'm going to listen and read to meditations. And it's honestly impossible to listen to and read, because it's like they're his private journals, and obviously it depends on the translation, but it's not an easy, it doesn't absorb so well. So I was curious if and I think there's definitely interesting things in there, but it's not written in a way that's easy to read. Is there ways that you've figured out how to hack that book to make it work better for you that I can take away from this and that others
Well,
could?
I also listen to it. I enjoy it. I have to see which translation I have. I think that it's the core ideas that are the most important. And Ryan Holiday does such a wonderful job. Ego is the enemy. What a great book. One of my favorites is, it's one of my quotes, obstacle is obs- obstacle is the way, I think is the book.
Yep.
And I completely, it's the thing that's in front of us. And he does such a great job of bringing in. So
So
I'm okay
I'm
with,
going to give you a, sorry, go ahead.
no, he does such a great job of bringing Marcus Aurelius to the public, to everyone, to be able to understand it. But I started with Tim Ferriss, and that's how I discovered Stoicism. He is a big Stoic fan, and I'm a huge Tim Ferriss fan. And like you, just quickly, I didn't know I was a Stoic. Like I was a Stoic and I didn't even know it when I started listening to Marcus Aurelius. I'm sorry. When I started listening to Tim Ferriss, he would bring up Stoicism a lot. And I use a lot of how he uses it also in my negotiations. And that's how I discovered them. And then I started reading Marcus Aurelius. I started reading Epictetus, Seneca. That's how I got into it. And then when I discovered Ryan Holiday, how could I not read Ryan Holiday?
Totally. And I cheated a little bit. I used Blinkist to go through Ryan Holiday's books pretty quickly. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like you hear all these things in different areas. I'm like, oh, it put together a timeline really good. I'm going to share with you a book that I recently finished, and it's been transformative. It's called Arete. Have you heard of it
Excellent. Yes, of course. And it is a
from
famous
Brian
Greek
Johnson?
name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, so it's 1,000 pages.
I know.
And I had to listen to it at 1.5 times speed and read it
Mhm.
together. It's like a Bible for self-improvement. Like it's so good. And there's a phrase that he says in there that I think takes obstacle is the way to the next level.
Mhm.
And it's something you can say. It's called ohms.
Yep.
Ohms. And what that means, and it's about anti-fragility. And it's the ohm stands for obstacles make me stronger. And that, do you know all this already? You're like,
Yes,
you're
of
so good.
course.
You're so good.
Anti-Fragile is a book by Nassim Taleb, and he's a
Yeah.
Stoic. So don't get me started on that.
No, I want
And
to get you
then,
started. I do want to get you
and
started.
arete it's a it's from a ancient Greek
Of course,
word. And,
virtue, excellence, living,
and that is
filling the
the
gap.
basis. And I used to read, I've read Iliad and Odyssey in ancient Greek, and then Metaphras, and then translated. So I lived in Greece for a few
Wow.
years, and it's important to me. Greek philosophy is very important.
I can talk about this for hours, and I think we should.
Me too.
No, but there's so much here that relates to your learning and your growth. And I've always knew what my personal mission was, and I think it relates to yours. And it's very general, but it actually
it fits perfectly into Stoicism, and it's to inspire and empower people to live their life to their fullest. And
Absolutely.
the reason I'm the CEO of Lawline is because when I learn something, I need to share it. And you're the same way. And like, you realize when you start doing strength finders or Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or virtue assessments, you're like, oh, you think you're unique, but there's so many different people who fit those molds like you. And when I read Arete, and again, it's the word, it means filling the gap, living your life to your fullest. And he says, you live Arete when in life you pursue trying to fill that gap, to live to your fullest. And that was like, wow, that's it. That's what everybody should be doing. Let's talk about lawyers for a second. Like, where do you think there's so much stress? There's so much, as a CLE provider, we have to do courses on suicide, on substance abuse.
Absolutely.
Where do you think the opportunity is to integrate more of Stoicism and this mindset into the legal profession? And I think that's what you're trying to do, maybe on your own or not.
Well,
but
part of it, Stoicism has always been, in my opinion, a mindset. And of course, like you said about Arete, part of Stoicism is also striving to be your best self.
right.
Striving. So there's two parts of it. So first of all, for us as attorneys, how great it is that Stoic principle of constantly wanting to be our best self in every facet of it, including learning. But I think everything we learn, it's not just about legal learning, it's about every lesson that we learn. The second part of that is how we handle stress. So if we start thinking like a Stoic, we reduce our stress, because I think some of it, we have to be careful as attorneys. We want to control things that we can't control. But at the same time, we have a lot more control than we think in how we react, right? How we handle ourselves. How we handle ourselves is part of the Stoicism. It's how we handle ourselves in the moment. And it reduces stress when you realize that, when you can really embrace Stoicism, it reduces stress. It shows us what we can control, and therefore we have to be able to let go. I think that's part of it, because it is highly stressful being an attorney if you don't have the right mindset.
Right. And part of it, like you said in your other things, is about having confidence in yourself and feel positive, which you get that from Stoicism, you get that from your parents, you get that from your other areas. Totally. And I want to go back to the first question, because we can go off on a tangent there too. So that was just one book you mentioned, Meditations. What else comes to mind of books that?
So I'm a huge, so of course, Ryan Holiday, we already discussed that. So I'm going to talk about authors. Robert Greene he's one of my favorite authors, and he's a little controversial. There's many books. So he has written, 48 Laws of Power.
Oh, I read that book.
48 Laws of Nature. He has written, it's just so amazing. He came out with the 33 Laws of Strategy. I could go on. He's amazing. He really, I love how and part of it is it's influence. So now, while all those things that we discuss, part of my strategy, it's a strategic influence. So think about all the things I try to discuss. I discuss negotiation, confidence, persuasion, asking for what you want. All those things, their influence is important. And you need strategy also. So all those things, in every facet of your life, in business, you need strategic influence. Now, what he teaches in all his books, he writes about it with historical context. Now, he's been controversial, though, because 48 Laws of Power, they're like, oh, it's so manipulative. No, he's just telling you, this is how power works. And take it or leave it. You could use it, not use it, be aware of it. But this is how...
48 Laws of Power. One of my friends bought it for me once, and it takes place about holding court. And
in one of them, right?
Yeah. And one part of that in the 48 Laws of Power. And I started, to your point, I started using some of the laws in my relationships with him and whatever. He's like, I know you're using it right now. You're manipulating, whatever. And I really loved it. And it was like a goof, but like serious.
Mhm.
48 laws of nature and 33 laws of strategy, I think you said.
Yep.
Are those in the same thing where they
Similar,
take
where he
ancient?
goes from history, he
Yeah,
uses
love it.
everything and think to yourself, I'm thinking influence. So while we sit there and we say Stoicism, it's what we can control, our reaction, how we handle ourselves, all these different things. But also the second part of that is because while I can't control external events, I want to influence. I want to be able to influence things. And that comes through negotiation, persuasion. And it's not about some people are like, oh, you're trying to influence people, you're trying to manipulate. No, that's not what I'm trying to do. You could influence people for one of my favorite books, another favorite book, which I'll bring it in, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It is not a manipulative book. It is a book that it is a it's one of my books that I read, listen to, whatever. Dale Carnegie, of course, every year. It's about when you make people feel heard, and it's part of the negotiation strategy, right? If you make people feel heard, safe, listened to, people will like you and you will have influence over them.
What's interesting, one of the things that biggest takeaways or that I remember from the book, and there's so many good things, but one thing that just I was like, oh, that's a good lesson, is you don't have to tell people when they're wrong.
No.
It just doesn't serve you. And I used to do that all the time. Oh, that's not right. I'm like, nope. Does that help me influence them? Or does that help me win friends? And that was a really good thing that just stuck with me. And I teach that to my kids a lot because they're constantly, I have twins, I was telling you before that we started, who are constantly telling each other they're wrong or that. I'm like, you can just listen. And unless it like needs to be told, like just accept it and understand. Sometimes people get a fact wrong. It's not a big deal.
Not a big deal. And the other part of that is also you could ask a question. You could find a way to let them see it without, you could guide them, steer them without telling them, oh, this is how it is, because suddenly it's all about you. It's not, it shouldn't,
100%.
it should be about them and their journey also. And if you can guide them in the right way, influence them, you're both going to end up agreeing on the most important things.
That also reminds me of a great leadership lesson, which is when you think somebody's doing something wrong, you should approach them with curiosity.
Absolutely.
Versus that's because you could be wrong. You can be misunderstanding, or just by asking questions and curiosity, it really helps with that. I wanted to share it. Well, How to Win Friends and Influence People with Dale Carnegie is an amazing book, and it's the one that's more well known. There's a book from him that actually had a bigger impact on my life, and it's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. It's transformative because it deals with stress, it deals with worry, and it's written 80 years ago or whatever it was. And it just he gives you formulas in the book that, like in the first few pages, like this formula will reduce your worry by 50%. And if it doesn't, you can stop reading. And the formula that it is, it's very straightforward. I'll share it because I'm sure you use it every day.
I would love that. So
the formula is, okay, let's say let's see if I can remember on the spot, but what is what is it? So there's two formulas. One is, what is it that you're worried about? What is the worst case scenario of what you're worrying about? Number two is accept that worst case scenario. And number three, start working on improving your situation to not have that worst case scenario. Have you heard that before?
I use that as a Stoic principle. And it also, that's how I think of everything. So I had never read the book, but I use that exact principle that you just said in my negotiations, in my life, and how I deal with every single thing in my life. So it's so interesting you said that because it's my go-to. And I not only think about that, but I also think to myself, okay, can I accept it? So if I can accept it, it could be the most horrible thing. But once you accept it, suddenly all the fear, all the worry, everything, it leaves you because you've come to the point you're like, okay, and then you say, okay, that could be the worst case scenario. So how could I move positively forward from
Yeah.
here? And that is the most important thing, because now you're like, okay, so that's the worst case. I'm already okay with it. So now what do I have to be scared of? Nothing, because I've already accepted. So now I think to myself, how can I improve my situation? How can I, and it could be a negotiation. I could say to myself, what are my different options? How can
For
I
sure.
improve this? It's in everything in life. Okay, so let's say someone could lose their house, right? Let's just say, right? Okay, what's the worst case? Okay, all right. So then if that happens, okay, but how can I not let that happen? I could
Yeah.
do this, I could do this, I could do this. Okay, meaning if I change jobs, I can, that was the worst case. Let's say like let's say I lost my job, or let's say I want to start a new career, or let's say this. Okay, what's the worst case? Then maybe I won't be able to pay my mortgage. Those are the worst
For
case
sure.
scenarios. But you're like, oh, but I can improve exactly what you said on that by saying, I'm definitely going to be making money here, this, and suddenly you just improve yourself, and suddenly you can move forward without fear because you're okay with the worst case scenario.
And one of the things, totally, one of the things he says in the book also is people spend 80%, whatever, of worry and stress about things that may never even happen, or they're not even sure. And the key is gathering the facts, and how much stress without even gathering the facts and making decisions from that. And again, it was written. The other thing that just stood out to me is you see these people who went through so much worry back then, and you're like, oh my God, this is who we are as humans. Like now they're all dead. No one's here anymore. But one example that stood with me from that book was there was this one guy who got 11 inmates off of death row because they were falsely convicted. Not one of those inmates thanked him afterwards, just whatever. And so what he says in the book is, if this person does not get thanked for getting 11 people off death row, you should not expect that. And because a lot of worry and fear is about you're upset that you don't get the appreciation that you need or whatever it is. So you don't expect anything from anyone is what he says. And that will help reduce your worry. Awesome. Anything else that comes? Because I'm loving this. I'll keep going down this river because you have a world of knowledge in your head.
I could talk about philosophy all day long.
But is there any other books
because
that
it's a life lesson. These are life lessons. Again, we're coming back to, I didn't know I was Stoic, and I was a Stoic and didn't know it. And these are like things like this. These are tools. These are tools like I call it my worst case scenario kind of strategy. I think that's a tool that attorneys can use also in their lives and in their businesses, in whatever it is.
Do you still have time in your current schedule to read new books? And is there any books? Are there any books that are more recent that are worth sharing that you're currently reading? I know it's hard to.
I read a lot of.
Take a look. Take a pause.
Yeah. I'm gonna look. I'm a big Audible girl. So it's sometimes you can't. I prefer. Alex Hormozy says it's better to listen and read at the same time because you're getting that much more. But I'll look at my Audible because I know.
And this is worth it because what I'm going to be doing from all I've done about 60 interviews so far. In each one, there's 3 to 5 book recommendations. I'm going to be putting together a master list of all these amazing recommendations.
So many good books. It's hard to
just throw them out there.
Okay, so it's a little out there, but of course I always love my negotiation book, but that's not a recent book. But somebody recommended. I just started.
What's a good negotiation book that you recommend?
Never Split the Difference.
Oh, I just read that.
I read that a long time ago. He's so good. Chris Voss is so good.
Yeah. So it's so funny because I have trouble falling asleep these days in general because of all the stuff in my head. And so that's a book I would listen to with a 30-minute timer on Audible. And I would listen to it, but I always fall asleep somewhere in there. So I finally got through it and I want to read it again, but I remember being super
He's really good.
impressed. Yeah. So he was
hostage negotiator. Yeah. So I read it a long time ago, but it's the kind of book that 2-3 years later, I'll reread it. But I use a lot of his strategies, but I say, when you listen to him, he's a little rough, but he uses all the strategies that are all based on empathy.
Is there any strategy that comes to mind that you use?
From mirroring to labeling, all those things work. Or label the feeling. It's how you one of the big things that I always talk about is how you ask a question. It's all about curiosity, exactly what you said. And
Yeah.
curiosity is empathy. So that's why you lead with empathy and emotional intelligence. And whether it's in a difficult conversation or it's in, I say difficult because both of them, you need the same strategies. A difficult conversation, a negotiation, it's the
Yeah.
same. So he always says lead with empathy and emotional intelligence
Well,
and curiosity. But empathy is curiosity. That's how you can be empathetic, because you're curious.
one of the things that stood out to me, and I can't remember exactly, maybe you have a better sense. They went through the classic book, Getting to Yes, and he talked about why actually some parts of that actually don't work in negotiations. Do you remember what that is or why?
I can't
Okay.
remember specifically, but it's true. Sometimes it doesn't work. Oh, I'm going to say
Yeah, it's hard on this. My
no,
mind doesn't work
I
that
don't know
well.
if this is it, but part of it, because thinking back to both books, I'm trying to think about it. But the thing about Getting to Yes is it's by Harvard negotiation gurus, but they're all about the win-win.
Like, you start
And
here, I start here. Let's get to the middle.
yeah, but you got to be careful with that. Some of the things that they say sometimes don't work in the negotiation.
Yeah.
You can't, because remember, at the end of the day, I am looking out for my client. And I want to make sure whatever the outcome will be will align with our purpose.
Yeah.
Because I always start every negotiation with, okay, what's the big picture? What's the big purpose? So I love it as a framework. Like, they have great parts of it that are very important, and everybody refers to it. But I like Chris Voss's book better, much better, because
Yeah.
it's really more real.
There was a story in that book that stood out to me, which was, it took place maybe in the 70s in a bank robbery where somebody ended up, maybe it was upstate New York somewhere, and the bank robber ended up killing a woman hostage who was young. It was a teller, I think. And it went against everything that they expected, because a bank robber is looking for money and whatever. What they realized after the fact was this was like the first, I think, if I'm getting this right, death by cop scenario. This person was there and wanted to die, and their negotiation strategies
Could have been different.
didn't work in that situation. You can't go the same way in that situation.
Not only that, it also doesn't work. That's the other thing that so sometimes when somebody has nothing to lose, so think to yourself, that person had nothing to lose, right? Isn't that what he really had? Nothing to lose. So when you have someone who has nothing to lose, it's hard to negotiate with them. They have the upper hand in many ways, because suddenly it's a completely different conversation, and and most times people have something to lose.
Yeah, totally.
That's what skin in the game is. That's why okay, so getting back to Nassim Taleb, one of his books is Skin in the Game. So for it to be in a negotiation or whatever it is, there's got to be if there has to be, both sides have to have something to lose. So when you have one side basically saying, I have nothing to lose, it's hard to negotiate with that.
Yeah, for sure. Ooh.
I know.
Talk. No, this is good. What else anything else on your, I'm loving this. I think this is so important. I think there's very few people, like, to be a practicing attorney, to be now a social media energy person, to be a philosopher, it's a rare each one of those notches make you unique and different, and also like to want to put your life's journey out there and help share. So I want to keep leading into the books that you've read that helped shape your journey. So is there anything else that's currently on your list or on that? And we can move on after.
I'll tell you, I'm an Ayn Rand fan.
Okay. So what's that? That reminds me of from the
Atlas
80s.
Shrugged. Atlas Shrugged.
So I remember seeing those commercials from, I don't know, Atlas Shrugged, and I don't know, there was like some sort of mountain. I remember seeing commercials about that. I've never read it. So
it's a very long book. It's different. And Fountainhead, she's written both of them, both great books. Another controversial writer, but I'm a fan. I'm a fan of her and her books. I've read Atlas Shrugged 3 times, which is.
But what's the main takeaway from the book?
She came from a different. So it was during. She was in New York. She came to New York City. She's from communism. So she had a very different concept about what our role is and what the government's role is, and how important innovation was. And while some people find her a little bit controversial because of some of her thoughts, and find her, I think she even had a book about the virtue of selfishness. So I'm just saying she had a little bit different thought process on that. But I have to say, I told you I was a Tim Ferriss fan. So I remember I discovered Tim Ferriss. Now, he doesn't have these great, amazing, crazy books, but what I learned from Tim Ferriss, what I wanted to,
4 Hour Work Week's pretty good.
yeah, oh no, but I'm saying, no, I'm saying I have a lot of his books, but
Yeah.
it's not like deep or anything like
Right,
that.
right.
That's what I meant. But first read him was The 4 Hour Work Week, which is his first book. And what I loved about that book is it was just thinking a little like that it is possible, that you don't need to, like, what can you, as attorneys, right? What can we do to reduce our workday? What can we, he brings in the Pareto principle, 80-20. From that, I'm like, oh, do we really, can we fire 80, like one thing you could fire 80, if your money comes from 20% of your clients, basically, then that's the 80-20. So 80% is like,
Wasted.
yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah,
So
totally.
I started thinking differently. And I always thought this way, that how it's about my quality of life, because that's, even though
Yeah.
it doesn't say it, but it is about quality of life. And think now, that was, I think, written in 2008. And I think it's so important for today's world.
For
Because
sure.
even though so think to yourself, he was ahead of his time, in my opinion,
Yeah.
at the time. Because I was always like, okay, so how can I have the quality of life I want? Because let's say, but I don't need to work as much, and I don't need to make the crazy amount of money, because we're all trying to keep up with the Joneses. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that?
Well, one of the things that I've seen from hundreds of conversations I've had in life, and people in midlife, mid 40s, above 40s, early 50s, is that realization of maybe this is enough, right? Like maybe like because when you're in your 20s and 30s, there always feels like, not that we still don't have a good 20, 30 years of our best years ahead of us, but it seems like you're on this path and things are moving, and not at some point for many people, you have many different walls as you go. But then when you're in your late 40s and early 50s, you're like, why am I still chasing that? I have 3 kids. I have a great house. I have a great life. I have a great work environment. Yeah, I don't have a private jet or whatever the quote unquote thing is, but this is exactly the right thing. Because if you spend your whole life chasing the destination and you forget the journey, is another philosophical thing. The journey is the destination, whatever.
Very true. But I have this slightly different philosophy.
Tell me.
And this is my new philosophy of life. It's a kind of culmination of everything. Like my husband and I, now that our kids, so my last of my children just graduated high school. So I'm like, okay, what's next? So I don't feel like I've hit a wall. I'm like, okay, let's go.
Yep.
What's my next big stage? Because now I'm all in on me, and look at all the things I've learned along the way. So I'm going to take everything I have. I'm going to give it all I got, because I got one life. So I got one life. And yes, you can, if that's what you choose, I'm good, then that's good. But you can also choose whatever you want, and you can do it on your terms now, because things have changed. So what I was trying to say, which I don't know if I said it the right way, 4 Hour Work Week, it was about using the tools we have to reduce our work week and to give ourselves that life that we want, being able to have the quality of life we want with not working as much or not having as much stress. Really, that was it. So today's world, think of all the tools we have. That's why I'm like, okay, I'm all in on AI. I'm all in on social media. I'm all in, because I'm open to all the possibilities, because what's going to happen is I get to use all these amazing tools to make my life better. I'm bringing it back. The reason I was bringing it back to Tim Ferriss is because we are at this point in our lives where suddenly what was only for the rich, we have full access.
Yeah. I
Just
love that.
so me as an individual, or as let's say an entrepreneur who may not have the money, but I have so many resources because of AI, because of social media, because of just the advances that we have. I'm going to utilize that, and then I'm going to do whatever I choose to do. And I can do it now with working less
Yeah.
if I wanted to. So my husband and I intend to do 3 months in Greece every year. And we wanted ourselves in a position where we could work from home or work close to
Yeah.
home and still work, make money, still do all the things we want, and have that amazing quality of life, and still be able to do all these amazing things entrepreneurially. Why? Because of all the wonderful tools. So I
But
think it's a combination of the best of both worlds.
by the way, if you're ever going to launch a brand, you should call it All In.
All in.
Yeah.
Oh, have you listened to the All In podcast? There's an
No.
amazing. Oh, you have to listen to that.
Okay.
It's such a good
I'll add
podcast.
that to my list. Okay.
No, it's a must.
Okay. In the last few minutes left, I think
Okay.
it's a good way to end it. You talked about becoming an empty nester. How have your teenage and 20-something kids, how have they absorbed all this learning that you've done? Because I know for me, I know I'll tell you this because you just did a podcast on confidence. We sometimes, every so often, we're successful at the table where we go around and say what we're grateful for, or we say something we like about someone else, we're proud of someone else in the family for. And recently, it was like last week, my 16-year-old son, who teases me all the time, who never seems like he's listening, he goes, "What I think I'm most impressed with you is the confidence you have in yourself." And I'm like, did he just say that? Because he doesn't act that way. No, but he never acts that way. And do you feel your kids are absorbing this stoicism that you're putting out there? Do you feel the same way I feel, where you're putting it all out there, they're deflecting, but maybe still absorbing? Just curious seeing how it affects your parenting.
I think they absorb it all. Look, it's all about, like I said from the beginning, that I share so I can empower, and I do it with my kids. It's through our examples that we're showing them how it's done, and they are sponges. Now I have one she's 22, she's in the real world. My son, like all my kids, and I shared last week on the podcast that I was speaking on about my kids were, I there was no such thing as I can't. It's a mindset, right? It's okay, what am I going to do to get this, do what I got to do? It was always that. And I had shared that my daughter, they were on the monkey bars, and the little girl in front of her was like, I can't, and my daughter at 4 years old, there's no such thing as I can't.
You said that?
Oh, yes, which the teacher pulled me aside. I'm like, she was just trying to empower her. But anyway, so when I went home, I have all my kids home right now. And I told them, I said, I gave you guys as an example. And she goes, it's true, Mom. She goes, everything we've ever decided that we want to do, we've never thought we can't do it.
Yeah.
And look at us, all three of us are doing exactly what we said we're going to do. And so, yes, they do listen to us, and we have to be the example to show them how it's done. And now they're going to take, and I always said, my biggest accomplishment is my 3 kids, and what are they going to bring to the world? What positivity and good things are they going to do? So that is very important, because we're the ones who are showing them how it is done, and that you do have that confidence and do think big, and all those things that are important. We're the ones who are leading the way.
I love that. In 2019, we moved to Barcelona for 2 years right before COVID with the kids. One of the reasons to show them that you can just move to a new country and make it work. And I think 3 or 4 months in, my daughter, who was 10 at the time, I was asking her how this transition how it's been for her. And she goes, it's much easier than I thought it would be to make new friends, to go that. I'm like, great. I'm like, what does that tell you about other things that you think are going to be hard to do in life? So maybe the things I think are going to be hard are also going to be much easier than I think. And I was just like, yes, lesson accomplished. And so to your point, it's not as much, you can say things all day, but by picking up, moving to another world and having to experience another country and doing that. Maria, I love the journey you're on. I love how you're putting it out there. It is so exciting to see you're going to be an empty nester, and you're looking at it as a whole new refresher.
Opportunity.
I have I think 8 more years now, because we have someone who's going to a son's going to 7th grade. So I'm like, okay, at least I have that time where I don't have to be figuring that out yet. But I'm with you. I think the next 20, 30 years are going to be the best. I am an all in. Sometimes when I see actually 20 somethings, even in my company, who, when we talk about AI, I feel like sometimes they're covering their ears or closing their eyes. They're like, I don't want to talk about AI. It's gonna take away my job, or I don't think AI can help me with that. I'm like, you sure? And so I'm all into, and one way I'm doing it is by talking to amazing people like you and sharing your story. So maybe you'll start a podcast sooner than later.
The funny thing is, I was on Kwame, Kwame Christian, who does negotiating anything.
Was that, I saw a podcast.
He has a negotiation podcast, and we talked about it. It was like 3 years, almost 3 years ago. And I said, he's, oh, so you got to let me know when you do the podcast. I'm like, I got to write my book first.
I wrote my first book in 2019, right before we moved away. It's called The Fast Forward Mindset, and it was a lifelong dream.
That's amazing.
And I'll tell you, it doesn't stop, because as sharers, I'm like, I'm ready. I'm almost done with my second book, and I want to keep putting. I got to keep putting them out there. I couldn't stop if I wanted to. I don't know if you feel that way. So I don't know. It's great to be around other sharers and teachers. And for Lawline, I've always felt like when we talk to our faculty, teaching is the best form of learning.
Yeah.
And that's because you have to be able to communicate effectively. So thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you for having me.
No.
I loved our conversation.
Yeah, me too. And other people will as well. And we'll continue. This will not be the end, because we're both in New York City.
Absolutely.
I will maybe after the summer or sometime in the summer, we'll get together.
Sounds great.
And talk even deeper about these.
Oh, yes. I'll talk about edit a little bit more.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Thanks so much.
You.
And what I would love when we speak is to get some I always love talking to customers and getting feedback on how things are going. So, awesome. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank
Maria.
you. Have a
Bye.
great week. Bye-bye.
You too. Take care. Bye.